Hello people, welcome to the Album Universe's first ever podcast, QTS, where we spend quality times with artists and designers to know their perspective about art, design and life. Today's very special guest is an Irish artist, Mr. Tommy Barr. Let's get straight to the conversation. And the first question I want to ask you is, how your art journey started, how it all began.
My art journey started really as a small boy with a father who had a great interest in art and a really nice ability to draw. So he would draw much like the drawing of me that you did, Soumya. He would draw people that he met. He would draw portraits from the television. He would draw pigeons and animals. And I enjoyed his drawing and I enjoyed drawing with him. So that was really what the first interest I had in art. When I then went to my primary school, I had a principal at the school who was very interested in art also. So there was a lot of drawing and playing with plasticine. There was a lot of poems, stories, books. Not so good on mathematics and science. So I had to catch up a little in my later schools. But that environment really nurtured a passion for the arts. And then where we live, there's a lot of mountains, there's a lot of seaside. So we would go off for family trips to the seaside. And my father would always say, look how beautiful it is today. Look at how calm the sea is. So when I started to see artists like John Constable, the Barbizon artist, Camille Pissarro, that really then attracted me to start to make landscape drawings of the landscape I was living in the same way as them. So that was the start of the art journey. That's where it all began. I think a lot of who you are is formed when you're a small boy.
True. Actually, sir, most of the artists does not get support from the family members to pursue art as their full-time career. To choose art to do not as a hobby, but as a profession. You were fortunate enough that your father at least understood the essence of art. Was there any other kind of resistance from your family members?
Even him, he would have considered drawing a hobby rather than a profession. And in those days I lived in a countryside and a rural community. There were no artists. There were no examples of an artist for him to see or for anyone else to see. So I remember as a small boy saying to him once, when I grow up, I'm going to be an artist. And he smiled. He said, yes, that's fantastic. You will have a lifetime of pleasure from your art. What are you thinking to do for a job? So he very much saw the art as a passion that went alongside. And to a certain extent, he was right. Because to make your living from art in my country, in Northern Ireland, it's not possible. Just to make your money from what you produce as an artist. So you must diversify. You must be able to do a little bit of design and graphic design, perhaps do a little bit of work curating exhibitions and working in galleries. Even today, I go in one day a week into my local municipal gallery as a guide and a helper, and I do what work needs done. Now, today I do it mostly for the company, to go out there, to be in the company of other artists one day a week. Doesn't really matter money-wise, but it does even things out. But that is an example of how I've gotten through. I've done some graphic design. I've mixed different types of occupations, but always to allow me with enough time to continue my art. And I think everybody in this country will be more or less in the same position where they diversify into lots of different things. And certainly my father wouldn't have seen anything other than that, other than lots of picking up little bits of things to keep me going. So there was no resistance. But I don't think my father back then would even have imagined that I would try to be an artist when I grew up, because he would have realized that's an impossible dream for a small boy. But he nurtured that dream. And much the same way, if your son said, I'm going to be a footballer, you would realize that it's highly unlikely, but you would let him go. Let him go. He can play football alongside another job and enjoy his football. And if by some strange freak of nature he gets to be a professional footballer, well, isn't that even better?
True. In India also, most of the parents does not allow their children to be an artist, full time as a career. It might come from a fear that in the future they might have to struggle a lot for the money and for well-being. And I think out of that fear, the parents try to resist their children to take up art as a career. But if they do it as a hobby, then it's fine, that's okay. Nobody is going to punish them for that. But if the children try to pursue it as a career, then difficulties come.
Every parent wants the best for their children. They want them to have enough money and good health and all those things. But if you encourage their passions and their hobbies that go alongside that, give them the opportunity to make of that as much as they can. That will enrich their life in another way. If it becomes a full-time profession and they do really well, that's great. If it never manages to be more than a profession, encourage it, or a passion. Encourage it. Let your children go where they want to go. You advise them, but let them go where they want to go. You never know. Some children can surprise you.
Sir, one question from here, very interesting one. Would you allow your own children to do the same that you have told it right now, that to follow their passion and what they want to do in life?
Yes, without doubt. I always encourage them. They have jobs that are not in the field of art, but I always encourage them, have your hobbies and your passions alongside that. If it's riding horses, or if it's playing sport, or it's art. Because to go into a job that is just a job and sit and do that job all day, every day, with nothing on the horizon, I can't imagine that. I think that would be terrible. If you're going in a job, but in 2 weeks you're going off to France or Australia, someone to ride horses or paint or play sport, even if it's just for hobby, you can look forward to that every day as you do your job. When you come back, you have the memories of that in your head to think back and enjoy. Don't just get in a job that's work without anything to break that job up, without a passion to break that job up and allow you to look forward and look back. So I encourage my children always to do this.
So as you mentioned earlier, that you have to do a mix of work to keep up with the pace of the society, to earn money and do art as your passion or hobby. So you have also done graphic design to bring money to your family. So have you done graphic designing for agencies, or it was mostly freelancing?
I have tended where I'm doing a project that's an IT project or something like that, I'll take a contract with the company to do whatever it is I need to. My last project was to do a redesign for the digital infrastructure of Belfast. So that was very much a communications and comms. It was an £18 million project to redesign Belfast's digital infrastructure. But that will have a particular date and a particular fund. So you can sign a contract and you can do that.
So what's that, the digital infrastructure design for Belfast?
Right, that's all the telecommunications. It's the network that we have across Belfast for our internet and our phones and all our electronic communications, internet exchanges and connections to, cable connections to other countries. So I was working with EE and BT and Telecom, all the big telecom companies to do that design. Now you quite often find with contracts like that, as it comes near the end, it gets really busy, so it's really intrusive on your art. So early on and in between contracts, you can do lots and lots of art, and then there'll be some months at the end when it's really busy in your art, will kind of go on a back burner. But that's the price of mixing your occupation. Sometimes, so that's always how I would do it. I would take a contract for a project and work with that.
Sir, as I have done graphic design, I want to tell you one thing, which is irrespective of what you do, you do have difficulties and you see other people and feel that they are doing great in their life. For example, we the students of graphic design always used to think that the students that have taken painting as their major are very happy. They don't have to listen to those kind of things that make this logo big, change this color to that, whether you like it or not. So they can do anything they want and they have their creative freedom, artistic freedom, but we don't have that. But as you have told right now that there are certain situations when in painting also you have to compromise on your creative freedom. You have to abide by what your client says.
For me the difference really is graphic design is art. A lot of contemporary art is done in a digital form, and you were talking about the sale of digital art and how do I feel about that. It's all art. Graphic design is art. Writing games is art. If you think of Lord of the Rings, the creation of the character Gollum, that was art. And when people look back on this time from in the future and they see in the film The Lord of the Rings, they see the character Gollum, that is the art of this time, the creation of that character. The only difference that I would see between that type of work and my painting practice is that because you're working for a customer, there are certain restrictions on you. If you make a website, you have to put their logo on, and they may well come and say, we want the logo bigger, or we want a brighter blue or something. So your art, it is still your art, but it's compromised to accommodate the customer. So that's the only difference I see. They're all art. It's the same life. To me, it's the same life. But there's just that little compromise. And the same applies if you're painting and you're working on a commission for someone. I don't do commissions, but if you're doing a commission, there's a little bit of compromise to what the customer wants. So painting can be compromised in the same way as digital forms, but they're both art. You're creating art. You should enjoy both. Yeah.
Sir, as you have traveled the world, participating in different art symposium and art camps, so you have also been to India, Sri University, for an art symposium. So my question would be, which art symposium among this was the most memorable for you, and why?
They are all really memorable in a way. Sri University in India, I absolutely loved that symposium. The organization of it was really, really good. They used first year fine art students. They allowed them to be art gallery assistants. What a fantastic opportunity for those first year students to have a collection of professional artists come in, work for 2 weeks in the studio, and they were their assistants. I still remember them all. Sneekta and Membi and Asha, and fantastic. But what they did was they brought real enthusiasm and energy into the studio. They were in there every day, bouncing around, just loving seeing the work. So they brought an energy to the symposium that wouldn't have been there if they hadn't been there. So that was the really nice part of that. I think maybe one of the most memorable was a symposium I did in Jordan, and it was the European Union's Spring Exhibition to the Middle East. So it was 2 Jordanian and 1 Iraqi artist, and then 3 artists from Europe. But the reason I remember that one, it was set up by Princess Wisdom, and it was run in conjunction with the National Gallery. So I was meeting people whose names I had heard, who were really important figures in the art world. And that was back when I was just starting off. So I was kind of like those first year students in Sri University, and that I was meeting all these really experienced, really important artists and learning from them and soaking up how they work. I think it's really important to spend time with other artists, especially when you're starting up. You asked, I think, in one of your exchanges about going to university. University is a good opportunity to go and spend time in the studio with more senior artists. So it's an opportunity, take it. It's not necessary. I think spending time in the studio with experienced artists is necessary. A degree in a university is one of the ways of doing that. So go, I would say always go for it. But when you finish university, continue going into the studio with other artists. You'd have seen how your lecturers work in the university. Quite often they're teaching but not working, so you don't actually get to see them work. But if you're in university and your lecturers are making and they're actually painting in the studio with you, then that's an excellent opportunity to see an experienced artist working. There's a lot of techniques, there's a lot of materials you can use, there's a lot of ways of thinking about art. So that's why I do it. Plus the energy it gives you and the enthusiasm it gives you and the whole adventure of it. It makes the life of an artist a fantastic adventure, and that's part of the pleasure. Making is half the pleasure and the adventure is the other half.
Yes, true. The experience of looking at experienced artists and their work and how they do their work, the whole process is itself a different kind of experience. And so yeah, I'll come to that question later on, that should an artist take university lessons to learn art, or they should learn it by themselves, self-taught artist. But before that, I would like to ask a few questions regarding that video that you have sent me. I have seen the documentary, and since it's amazingly filmed, the painting that you have done there was of a man whose name is Pariano, and he's a differently abled person, as we can see in that video, with one leg. You have been very sympathetic to that person. So yeah. Why do you choose Pariano as a subject of your painting in that Sins or Visual Arts Residence 2019? Because I have also seen that there were very beautiful landscape, beautiful churches over there. So as you were telling before that you also like landscape painting and portray the beauty of nature. So why have you chosen Pariano as the subject?
You should at the end of the blog put up the link to that and let people follow the blog with that video, because what we are talking about, that is a really nice example of the practice of it. So what I'm telling you, I think, is the way I make art and how I approach these subjects. You'll see that in the video. But I went, that was in another country from my own. That was an old medieval church. It was in Transylvania. So I got invited to attend that symposium. So I arrived with no idea what I was going to paint, which is how I always arrive. I just arrive, I walk around, I look around, I see what there is. It's really, really beautiful. But obviously, in the wintertime at least, it's going to be really, really tough up there. Be really cold. It's that altitude. There's not a lot of work. There's not a lot of money. But the people were whizzing around. They were doing their work. They were working hard. But this one old guy, Pariano, he clearly had a difficult time. He will see he only has one leg. But he was a very dignified old gentleman. And I just, in trying to communicate with him and with knowing one of the other artists whose father knew him, I became interested in him and I became interested in his life and how he had survived. I would say always paint something that interests you. You can tell the difference in work that's been painted because somebody's given you money, or something that's been painted because you wanted to paint it. There's that little bit of extra effort and intensity in the observation, I think, that gives it away. And I became interested in this guy, so I thought, I'm going to try to capture the nature of him. And you will see in the video I was saying Aristotle has said that the job of an artist is not to draw or to create the shape of the thing, but the meaning of it, to try to capture what it's about, to try to almost, if you like, explain it or to interpret it. So what I was trying to do was capture the nature of Pariano. Really good portraits and drawings of people give you a sense of the personality of the person. There's a drawing by Andrew Wyeth called The Drifter. It's a portrait of an old guy in a white corduroy jacket. And when you look at the portrait, you think he's quite a shy, reserved, quietly spoken guy. How do you know that? It just, the drawing gives you that feeling for the person, whether it's right or wrong. And perhaps when you look at Pariano, if you can see something, you can see how I see him rather than how he really is. But if you can see something about the person in the drawing, then it's a success, whether it's really him or whether it's what I think he is. So that, all of that interests me, so I went for it. Why?
I love the way you have mentioned the Aristotle philosophy there, that to portray a subject, you don't have to portray its shape and form. You instead of that, try to portray its inner essence, right? So you told that if you could have also taken a camera and taken picture of that would also be an art, but you try to every time take out the essence of the particular subject and put it on your canvas, so that people afterwards also, if you look at the painting, they can also understand the kind of atmosphere, the kind of essence that you wanted to portray on that particular subject. Through your painting, they can understand that what Pariano is going through every day in his life, being a disabled or differently able person. Like things were not good for him, as you have mentioned that Pariano, being a disabled person, was also taking care of his family in that kind of situation, harsh environment, very cold. And
yeah, it's where I was saying in the winter in particular, that will be quite a tough environment up in those mountains. And I was trying to portray his life in that harsh environment. So to go up there and paint beautiful nature with beautiful trees and rivers and birds flying behind him, it wasn't the aspect of his life that I wanted to create. There's no doubt, on a nice sunny day up there, it's a really, really beautiful environment, and in that way he's lucky to live in such a beautiful place. But I don't think that was what shaped his personality. I think what shaped his personality was his struggle when nature wasn't supportive. So I decided I would just paint this rough, stormy, monochrome, harsh, cold environment, put him in there. Actually, before I even decided to put Pariano into that environment, I had already started to paint it, because I thought, boy, up here in the winter it's going to be hard. I'm going to start painting that. And I'll fit people, or I'll fit the church into that, surviving in that environment. So it's just the ideas come, and when you start working, more ideas come. My initial ideas came from just walking around, talking to people, looking at the place. But then once you start to paint, more ideas come, and it builds up and develops.
okay, it's like walking layer by layer, right? So you first of all start with something, maybe with your intuition and all. So then you start getting some information, and you then start piling up all those information one after other, and then you start getting somewhere, and that is your final thing.
No, you were saying about painting in layers. That I absolutely do paint in layers. And I paint in oils, so that's my medium of choice. But when I'm off at a symposium, because I have 2 weeks or 10 days or something, I paint in acrylic because I need the layers to dry in between times. Particularly colours like white and oil paints are very slow to dry. So I paint in acrylic. So that was all done with metallic acrylic paints to give it a little bit more sparkle.
Okay. Sir, may I ask you one thing, like that you have told right now that you haven't planned what to draw, but you have went there, felt something and seen a person, and then suddenly you thought of ideas and try to come up with something which is very sensible. So I want to ask you here that kind of experience, that without any prior planning you have done that. So that kind of experience, have that helped you to evolve as an artist?
Yes, I think so. Going to new places in the same way as working alongside other artists is important. I find going to new places important. And for example, if you walk into a house for the first time ever and there's a little spider's web up in the corner of the ceiling, you will see it. You'll see that little spider's web. After you go in and out of that house for a week, you don't see it anymore. And I talk to people about seeing things with fresh eyes. If you go somewhere you've never been before, you are somehow more alert and more observant. You see more, and after you've been there for a while, it's difficult to continue seeing. So when you go to new places, if you go and you don't have a plan for what you're going to paint when you get there, you'll really see everything. And you'll see in a sharper way and in a more interesting way, and it'll result in more interesting work. If I had decided I'm going to go there and paint a still life, I could have done that at home. And it would have been no better observed than any other one. So it's nice, go to new places, look with fresh eyes, see all the details and see everything. It will inspire your painting.
So you are telling that every time an artist's perspective of looking at things should change a little bit, so that it becomes a fresh kind of art. So now I am coming back to that question of like you were discussing that whether a young artist should pursue his study of art from a university or he should be a self-taught artist. So what should a young art aspirant do to become a great artist? Like first, there are two options. The first option is like to take up proper art training from any university or from any experienced artist, or to do self-training, self-learning, going out there and sketching and drawing anything that the artist see. So what would you suggest a young artist to follow?
No matter where you go or how you do it, you're self-teaching. You're learning. You learn if you're constantly sketching, constantly painting, you're constantly improving. So I think every artist should consider themselves a self-taught artist. It's possible to go to the best university in the world with your brain turned off and learn nothing. You have to learn, you have to look and see and practice and draw and experiment. I think you have to go out and look at other people's work and look at other people looking. So you have to take every opportunity you get, you have to take it. But I don't really see the difference between going to a symposium and going to a university, because there's experienced artists there and you're learning from them. So I would say take your opportunities. Every time you get a chance to work with someone or see them working, take it. University is a chance to do that. If you get it, take it. It won't destroy your career if you don't go to university, but it will destroy your career if you don't go and learn from other artists and work with other artists. In a way, for me, when I go to a symposium and I paint alongside someone for 2 or 3 weeks, I have learned from them. If I was carrying on doing that for 3 years, there's only so much I can learn from those people. There's only so much you can learn from those people. So your time in university, if it's just learning from 5 teachers, 3 years is much too long. But university allows you to work alongside other students, to go to lectures with visiting artists. So if you get a chance to go to a lecture for a visiting artist when you're in university, go. But if there's one in your local gallery or your local museum, that's exactly the same. Go to that as well. If you're at university and there's a visiting artist in a museum where you live, go see him too. So it's not about the name. It's not about whether it's called a museum or called a university or called a symposium. They're all opportunities to go out and work with other artists. Just do that.
To get exposed to art, more and more art, and
yes.
So take things up.
More art and more artists.
But here is one question.
Don't worry too much about it. Don't worry too much about the place you're going to being called a university. Just treat it as a...
But there is one question rising from here, sir. So let's say I am a young artist, art aspirant, right? So I want to learn art. Now there are 2 options. I go to somebody who teach art. So they have their own style of doing things, right? An artist have their own style of doing things. If I go to him and start learning art from him, then don't you think I would get molded somehow like around that person? It would be like my art would be derivative of that person's style. Maybe I get influenced so much by that person's kind of strokes, brush strokes, and the way he do things. I guess get so influenced that I start copying him, and maybe mixing matching with some of my part and his part, I develop an art. So do you think that would be a barrier for a young artist to develop his or her own unique style of art?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely. If you spend a lot of time with one artist and only that one artist, then that's the only thing you're learning. That's how you understand art, particularly when you're young. So you will just understand, this is art, this is how I make art. So your technique is going to become very like him. He can definitely, that person can teach you something, particularly at the start. He can teach you mixing colors, he can teach you how he works, but he's just one person. You're so right in that you would just become a clone of that person if you didn't see anything else. It's really useful to have a mentor guiding you, but you need to be out seeing other artists and seeing all the different ways and trying all the different ways. So in a way, what Sri Sri University did, where each year they bring in a group of artists, and the students get to go in the studio and see all those about 12 of us all working. Next year there'll be 12 more artists. Next year there'll be 12 more artists. So you're right, it's about seeing lots of artists and seeing lots of things. If you're being taught by one artist, you're not seeing any more artists. That's really not going to work. After 3 months, it's time to move on. For me, that's what I think. Other people might tell you different, but that's what I think.
Yeah. True. Got it. And sir, regarding that thing, I do have one follow-up question. Is that so the question that I was asking on the later part of it was that so how do a young artist develop his unique style of doing things? Like, let's say I want to do something which has never been done before. Is that possible, first of all? If that's possible, then how one should approach, art and learning things and not get overwhelmed, not get overwhelmed by seeing other people's art and your mentors, way of doing things. So how do you think that is there any process that one can follow to, nurture his way of doing things, so that kind of, ability, that the disability also, like imperfection also creates sometimes uniqueness. right? So the thing that I do wrong might end up being in a place where I develop a very different and unique kind of an art, which is me only. So what do you think, how one person can reach to that?
That was a really insightful question. I think you know the answer to this. You've given me the answer and the question, and I agree with your answer completely. I think you can do something completely new, because I think every artist is a unique person, and what they do, if it's them, it'll be different from everybody else. You need to see lots of different work. You need to avoid the trap of really admiring one artist and thinking they are great and they are fantastic and I'm going to be like that, and allowing their work to be too dominant. You've got to see lots of different artists and see lots of different possibilities, but you've got to keep your mind open to experimentation as well. You know, you've got to try mix and matching things from different artists, try different things out, make mistakes. And the truth was in your question about making mistakes, and that might become your style. Your style is partly developed by seeing those artists and seeing what you can do and seeing the possibilities, but the other half is actually in the studio making things. When you're in the studio doing things, if you try ways you haven't done before and you move the paint around, there'll be mistakes and accidents, and some of it will be terrible and you'll have to throw your painting out. But in doing that, sometimes it works well. Sometimes something that you do can be really, really nice. So you add that into your toolkit, if you like. So as you're making mistakes and finding things you like and finding things you don't like, and then building up this toolkit of how you work and the things that you like, that's how you develop your own style. Your own style is a combination of experimentation and choosing what you like. If you do 3 or 4 different things and you like one of them and you add that to your toolkit and you throw the other 3 away, you're becoming unique because you're making choices about where you will take your art. So you really did give me the answer in the question. It is making choices as you go along for what you like and what you'll include in your way of working. And over time, you become unique. And you don't actually become unique at some point in time or do something that's unique. You develop your way of working, that's your voice, that's unique to you.
So I am also, getting frustrated every single day that everybody has their own unique, sense of doing things and unique sense of doing. There is a uniqueness of doing their own artwork. So, like for example, if I see your painting and if there is no signature of your like Tommy Barr, I can also spot that it is being done by Tommy Barr only, because there is a kind of style, there is a kind of brush stroke and using monochrome black silver colors, so that we can understand that it is been done by you. So yeah, obviously, like it's the same place for every young artist. I'm like getting frustrated about all these things.
Yeah, but don't see it as a frustration. See it as a voyage of discovery, and you'll be really surprised where the journey ends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay then. And sir, regarding like my page is all about doing art for musicians. So basically, what I do is I design album cover art for musics. Like, so from there only I need to ask questions which is relevant to the music industry, making art for musicians. So as far as I know, and I have seen your Facebook account, there is an artwork which is very interesting. There is a tree branch and a beautiful bluish silverish kind of color palette, and you have done one artwork for your multi-instrumentalist artist friend. His name is Terry Smith. So I would like to know the process behind, like how you approach certain that kind of brief, like for example, if a musician approaches you that, see sir, you are a great artist and I want an art to be made for my music from you, and then how from that part, how do you break down the brief and how your process actually goes from listening to what he or she want, and how you deliver that art to that person?
It's important to say at the start that this was made for a brand, so it wasn't a commercial transaction in any way. So in the same way that I was saying, if you do your art as part of a contract, it's compromised. They'll say, I want it to be more blue, I want the logo to be bigger. This was not the case with Terry. He trusted me and he said, Tommy, make me a sleeve. So I had complete freedom to make this sleeve. Now, the music on that CD is the music of Turlough Carolan, an Irish composer from 300 years ago. So it's very old Irish music, which I really, really like. Terry knows I really like that music, and I know that he really likes that music. In the same way that I was saying, Aristotle says, don't draw the shape of something, draw the meaning of it. Music is a great thing to be working with, because there is something to work with. Well, Carolan's music is from history. There's a lot of history involved in it. There's a lot of storytelling in it. Even though it's just music, it's music about a person or a place or an event, and he has tried to capture that in the music. So when I started to write a sleeve, to paint a sleeve, I wanted to paint something old, mysterious, like legends and myths and old stories and, a misty landscape. So I had a subject that I could work with. So I just, in the same way as I painted Pariano, and I thought about the person and, how do I depict him, the music was there for me to think about, to depict that. So if I properly tell the meaning of the music or the story of the music, then I'm telling anyone looking at the CD what's in the CD. And then Terry accepted the sleeve because I think he also was feeling the same sense of the music in the picture. So we kind of worked together on that, but it wasn't a different process. It was the same process painting the music in that CD as it was painting Pariano in his cold environment in Transylvania. So I approached it in the same way. It's the same technique. So that's how it's done. But you are right. You have to depict the music that's on the CD. You can't just do this a commercial thing.
Uh-huh. So sir, I would like to tell you something about how I approach this, designing this kind of things for music. So I first of all listen to the music.
I would enjoy hearing.
Yeah. So I first of all listen to the music and I enjoy it. I don't think about creating that design and how it would come like, and what kind of color I will use. I don't think about anything. I just listen to the music first of all. For example, if you listen to music is a time machine. It takes you to another world. Now, if you visualize correctly, like if you are putting your headphones on and you are listening to the music and closing your eyes, and you can see clearly that what kind of maybe landscape, maybe what kind of environment is there. And then after 2-3 days, I completely forget about that. I do other works. And on the back end of my brain, maybe subconsciously, there is something going on around that. I don't know. And when on the 3rd, 4th day, I sit back on that music again, then things get clear, what exactly I want to do, what kind of exact path that I want to take. Would I do it a realistic painting kind of a thing, or would I do a mix of matte painting and Photoshop editing, or would I do a complete complete sketching thing, and what kind of color palette I would choose. So from there onwards, like thinking about more and coming after that later, and it takes only 2-3 days to execute it. But for my process, like it's more about thinking and visualizing and romanticizing about the music.
Yes, and that's the correct. I think that is the correct way to work. So I think to get into the music and feel the music, and it's not anymore. I think it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear how you think about it and how you set about creating the music, or creating the sleeve to go with the music. So I think, go for it, man. Go for it.
Yeah. Experienced artists always tell that don't look at money to young people, right? Don't look at money on the first hand. Just do your art. But being a young artist, we always think that how do we survive doing art without money? So what would your advice to young artists on making money by doing art, or they should never connect art with money? What would be your advice?
Well, my general advice to artists would be to follow your passion, to go with digital art or painting art, or go with whatever art. Try to paint the subjects you like, but of course you have to make a living. You have to find a place where you have to live. If I was advising you, I would say you obviously love music, you obviously love painting sleeves and painting without music. There is a big industry around sleeves, posters for events, videos to go alongside music. There's a whole sphere of music there. So if I was advising you, I would say follow your passion and go into that aspect of music. And take your art in there, and you enjoy making your art in that place. But that is a big industry. There's a lot of money in the music business, so there's a lot of money to pay you for your sleeves and to pay you to make videos and graphic designs and posters and adverts and stuff. So I wouldn't say avoid money. I would say follow your passion and find the money there, rather than go to somewhere just for the money where you don't follow your passion. So I think you're already looking ahead to where your path should go, and I think you probably know that already. So I'm advising you of something you already know, but others, younger artists than you, will hear this advice, and it'll be more useful for them than it is for you, because I think you know already. That's the perfect word. That's the perfect word. Yeah.
There is a very interesting round. It's called rapid fire round. So you have to respond to what I say in one word, right? Are you ready?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm ready. Go.
So starts here. Ireland.
It's a beautiful country.
India.
It's too hot. I'm full of fantastic people.
Painting.
My passion.
Teenage love.
Say again.
Teenage love.
Thank goodness I've got beyond it. Thank goodness it's over. Say again.
Black.
The night. The middle of the night.
Red.
Much too bright. The sign of danger.
Childhood.
Where it all begins.
Amazing, sir. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you have got something insightful, and thank you very much for staying with us. See you on the next episode. Bye bye.